So far in this course, all of our SQL injection attacks have relied on exfiltrating data via the web app. Now sometimes that's been quite easy, such as with the union-based attacks. But as you would have seen in the blind-based attacks in the previous module, it can get really laborious trying to suck this data out through the web app. So rather than have to do everything over HTTP through the website, let's actually just create a new login in the database. Now I'm back on my local version of Hack Yourself First here, because you simply can't do that in the Azure one. And in fact, Microsoft's Azure SQL database model won't even let you create logins unless you can execute in the context of the master database. And the web app isn't connecting to that one. So Azure actually has a pretty good neat native defense there. In my local one though, there is no such defense. So let's do this. We're going to manipulate this query string again. And this time, I just want to close off the statement outright. Now, let's actually create a new login. So here's the SQL syntax. We're going to run create login, and we'll just call it my login, with password, and we'll give it a very simple bad password. Let's run that. Now the page is loaded without error, which means that we just created a syntactically correct query which we tacked on the end of that v12 condition. So in theory, this should have created the login in the database. Now a login is one thing, but actually having the permissions to do much is another. So let's now do this. Let's add it to the sysadmin role. And the way we're going to do that is to run the command alter server role sysadmin add member my login. Let's give that a go. Okay, so that also executed successfully. So now we should know both the login and the password in order to remotely connect to this machine. But there's one other thing that we need to know first. We need to actually know the name of the server. So now let's go and grab that as well. And we're going to go back to this equivalency test in order to cause an error-based injection. So it's going to look like this. And 1 equals at server name. And here's our machine name. And this one is just Troy PC. So that's everything we need. Now what I will point out is that this is the internal machine name. That's usually not going to be externally accessible via that name without being part of a fully qualified DNS name. Even then, it may still not be externally accessible unless you have the IP address. And I'm going to show you how to find that later on in this module. So for now, we're just going to work on this name, and then we'll look at how to get those other identifiers a little bit later on. So I'm going to jump back over to SQL Server Management Studio. I'm going to go up to File, and I'm going to connect the Object Explorer. And let's connect to Troy-PC. We're going to use SQL Server Authentication because we've just created a SQL Server login. And the login we're going to use is the one we just created. So my login and password of password. Let's connect. And here we are. We now seem to be connected. Now, of course, this is predicated on the assumption that you, as an ethical hacker, can actually connect directly to the database from your network segment. And very often, databases are firewalled off in a private network segment. So this doesn't always work, but there are certainly many cases where the database is accessible. So from here, we should actually be able to go and run a new query. So for example, can we get a list of the databases on the server? Yep, there's our databases. There's one down there called Hack Yourself First. So let's see if we can use that database and create some objects. Well, we can certainly use it. Let's try and create something. And we've just created a table. So clearly, we have some rather excessive rights on this. Now, inevitably, what we'd really want to do is say, look at all the tables, identify that there's one called user profile, and then just suck all the data out. And there we go. That's much easier than SQL injection if we can actually get a connection direct to the database. But of course, we did that with an initial injection risk. And we found that we had the rights to create a local login. We escalated that privilege to sysadmin. We had the ability to identify the database name, And again, we'll look at how to find the IP address in a moment as well. And then we remotely connected, found the target, and sucked the data out. So that actually got really, really easy. So that's how we can create those database logins. But there's another way we can get remote access as well. And that's if we can discover the password for one of the SQL Server logins. So let's go and have a look at how we can extract that from the SQL Server hashes.